is she?
Let me turn off music.
My friend Michelle.
Welcome. Hello, Romy.
Hi, Sebastian.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Nice and stormy outside.
Yes, here too.
Cacahuetas in the house. Let's just give a couple of minutes to allow for more people to join in.
Okay.
Have you good on your island?
Yeah, we've had every weather under the sun. It's a bit like being in Melbourne. Today has been sunny and stormy. Every it's
Yeah, it's been pretty nice here. Now it just turned. So let's see who we got in. Okay, we got a nice bunch of friendly faces. Cool. All right, welcome everyone to our Throwback ThaiVedic Thursdays live, coming at you from the magic shores of Kopangan. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sebastian Bruno, one of the founders of ThaiVedic, School of Healing, Movement, and Bodywork. And today, here with me, I have the fabulous Romy Grossberg. Did I pronounce your last name right?
absolutely.
So Romy's been a great friend for, I guess, about a decade now, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, about a decade. Romy is a great friend. Romy is a fabulous counselor, and Romy is a published author.
Yes.
So would you like to start by telling us what is a counselor?
What's a counselor? Okay. We need some counseling, Sebastian. A counselor really is somebody very objective and non-judgmental that can help you work through different issues of whatever's going on in your life, whether it's mental health, emotional health, moving forward, letting go of old crap. So it's really just a touch point to help learn some of the skills that maybe we didn't learn growing up, whether we had old trauma or we didn't learn the skills growing up. So it's sort of about actually getting all the coping mechanisms and skills that we need. So whether I work with teenagers or I work with adults, I also do couples counseling, communication skills. So just skilling up in the areas that maybe we missed out on. My style of counseling is particularly casual. This is what you get. I don't make it any more formal or anything like that. And I think that's what people like when they come to me. I had one beautiful client tell me that a counseling session with me is kind of like being slapped in the face and having your hand held at the same time. So I'm brutally honest.
Oh my.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to ask how much do you charge for that? That's okay.
It's very flat. The holding hand.
Great.
But just that brutally honest, the way you would talk to a friend, but with an honesty of someone that's somewhat removed.
Yeah. So that dose of realness that invites and allows for the same in your client, patients, friends. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And I guess in order to be able to hold the space for people that come to you, seek your services for help, guidance, clarity, you need to have quite a good capacity to witness, identify, and perhaps either process or help them process their own emotions, correct?
Yeah.
So we could say that a great deal of emotional intelligence is needed.
You wove that in very nicely. A great deal of emotional intelligence is needed.
Sure. And that's exactly the topic of our conversation today, emotional intelligence.
Yes,
this has been a term that has become quite a buzzword.
Yeah.
Something that we see coming up quite a bit. But perhaps some people are asking themselves right now, what is that? What is emotional intelligence? I mean, I heard about IQ, intelligence coefficient. Help me. Is that what it means?
IQ, intelligence quota.
Quota. Cool. And now we have EQ, right? Emotional intelligence. Could you tell us what is emotional intelligence and why is that important?
So emotional intelligence can either be called EQ or EI. EI is more obvious because it's the initials, but it became a buzzword probably 5-ish years ago, even though it's something that has existed always, like different words become different buzzwords at different times. This one really, Daniel Goleman became kind of the guru, I suppose, of emotional intelligence because he wrote some books at it when it was becoming a big, big topic. But emotional intelligence really is kind of recognizing, understanding, and managing your own emotions, whilst being able to recognize, manage, and help influence in understanding other people's emotions, so that it's partly yourself and partly others. And how does that all intertwine and work so that you can live in society? As humans, we are a culture that need communication, need each other, need the society and the community. So emotional intelligence then becomes a really big deal.
Yeah, I guess the more we flock into condensed areas, moving into cities, moving into places where we just packing up and sharing space with more and more people, that ability to process that co-shared space demands that there's a greater ability to process how we react to each other, how do we process our emotions and our neighbors' emotions, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Good. So obviously, this sounds like something that would be important to learn, important to cultivate, important not only to give it a good try, but to give it a good training. So
Yeah.
why is this something that I didn't learn in school? Why is this something that is coming up now as quite a buzzword, and yet it can be such a foreign concept or term for so many people?
Yeah, look, it hasn't been, especially when I went to school and when you went to school, it didn't really exist. We learned, you know, the core subjects, math, science, English, or whatever it was, but we didn't learn social skills or social emotional skills and things like that. Schools are much more open to the idea now. I head at lots of conferences and go to schools and teacher trainings and working with students myself. Only in the last few years has it become a thing that we've learned. And for me, it came as a bit of a backwards way. I've been counseling adults for, say, 15 years or so. And one thing dawned on me was that it didn't matter who I was counseling or what the topic was. It didn't matter what we were talking about. The underlying thing was that we did not learn these skills when we were younger. And I started thinking, why didn't we learn these skills? No matter what they were, they all fall under the umbrella of emotional intelligence. So I started actually approaching schools originally in Australia saying, why are we not doing this? And luckily, a couple of the schools were like, yes, please. And I started actually going in and teaching it at schools because it is something that we can learn. Some people naturally have a greater emotional intelligence and are natural born leaders or naturally find social skills easier, and some people find it very, very difficult. But if you look now, even medicine, something that is very science technical, there is now elements of social skills, patient management, interpersonal skills, and they're looking for how do you relate to people is now something you get tested on. How do you relate to people just as much as how do you know the science and the technical aspects of it? So leaders, teachers, people who run, you know, sort of heads of communities, if we can increase our emotional intelligence, increase our understanding of self, then life is much easier. And if we can increase our understanding of self and others and how we interact in the world, then life is really a lot easier.
It's interesting because you mentioned a couple of times leadership, and while it seems quite obvious that for a natural born leader to be quite natural to have quite an abundance of emotional intelligence, it seems that the way that society and the business structures have been built is that they celebrate, promote, reward leaders that are perhaps not so much on that side of the spectrum, but quoting quite high in IQ. And I think we're now coming to a point where we're realizing that we've been doing this for a while and it's not quite working out. You know? To prioritize performance and achievement at any cost in the long run, in the long game, it's detrimental, and it's not really paying out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for a long time before this became a buzzword or a topic that entered business, it was a bit fluffy at the beginning, and now it's very much in the business world also. Leaders were, the smartest person in the room. If you were to be the boss, you had to be the smartest person in the room, kind of thing. But now, not so much, because you can't lead if you can't gain the trust of your staff. You can't lead if you don't know how to explain things to people, if you don't know how to understand how they're feeling, or that maybe you're asking too much. If you're leading in kind of what I call much more of a bully style, then you're not going to achieve the outcomes that you need. I mean, if you look at the jobs that you've had in your life, what are the best ones? It's not necessarily about the most amount of money or the most prestige. It's how did you feel when you got into work? How did you feel when you went home? Did you look forward to going to work? My last job in Australia, I actually looked forward to going to work, and I went home smiling because my team leader, her interpersonal skills were incredible. She could see when I was okay, she could see when I was not okay, and I didn't even need to verbalize it. She simply could see what was going on, which is like empathy, which is one of the elements of emotional intelligence.
Good. So could we perhaps touch on those 4 points of emotional intelligence?
Yeah. So there's 4 or 5 or 6, depending on who you follow. I look at the 5 elements. We're into the 5 elements now of self-awareness, self-regulation, self-motivation, empathy, and social skills. If you can incorporate all of those 5 on some level, you will notice immediately that life feels a lot easier.
That's good. It's very interesting that as you mentioned these points, and as you mentioned that this is a concept that somehow gained popularity quite recently, this is something that obviously been around since the beginning of mankind. Mankind always had emotions. We always had to to learn how to process and handle our emotions and other people's emotions. So obviously this has been around for quite a bit. And in relation to my area of studies, in relation to ThaiVedic and especially the component of Thai massage within the context of traditional Thai medicine, Thai medicine is inherently Buddhist medicine. So not all medicine is Buddhist medicine, but Thai medicine is absolutely Buddhist medicine. And Buddhist medicine is very much about how can we eradicate suffering. And one of the core practices in Buddha Dhamma is the practice of the 4 Brahma Viharas, the 4 great abodes, or the 4 divine states of mind, you could call them. And they are Metta, Karuna, Mudita, and Upekkha. And Metta translates as kindness, friendliness, that genuine wish for others to be well, to be happy, to be free from suffering. Karuna translates as compassion. And it sounds a little bit like the empathy that you're talking about, the ability to feel what the other person is feeling, in this case, feeling their struggle, feeling their despair, feeling their suffering. And go a little bit further and use that as a motivation to act on it. How can I be of service and help alleviate this person's suffering? Mudita translates as empathic joy, or just to rejoice in someone's success, accomplishments, and seeing them thriving in their life, in their career, in their health, in their love life. And the 4th one is Upekkha, and that translates as equanimity, and is to cultivate and develop that sense of balance where you don't allow yourself to get too elated or too defeated with the ups and downs of life. So in a way, it seems that they fit quite well with this notion of emotional intelligence. And these are the 4 Brahma Viharas as part of Buddhist practice, something that's been around for 2,500 years. So just a little perspective on sometimes the hype that these buzzwords get. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of resources, and there's something that as humans we've been dealing with for quite a while.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it's not new. It's just maybe newly been formed into our culture, maybe, I don't know if people realized something wasn't working or how it became the new thing to follow, but clearly not a new thing. I mean, even looking back in how we used to live in communities rather than in cities where everyone, you know, with the door closed. Before that, people lived in communities where they looked out for each other. You should come and teach with me, teach the key in schools. It's exactly the same kind of thing as what you're saying. And just to give kids perspectives, like I work with teenagers, but to give them perspectives on what's going on. It'd be very interesting. Me anyway.
We have a little comment here that I would like to read from Storyteller Gone Wild. Unfortunately, nowadays the definition of a great leader has changed to someone who can be emotionally detached from themselves and others and only focus on benefits. Yes.
And I would guess that that's probably moving into the politics, like political world and finance, business, high-end business, where that was the norm. And yes, it still exists, but hopefully we're moving more and more away from it, where we can actually look at the influence of emotional intelligence and how that works. I mean, I've personally seen people get jobs because of their behavior, even though they weren't the smartest person in the room. And I think that's an incredible thing, that we're moving definitely in the right direction.
We got another question. This is from Nas Bocas do Mundo, very Portuguese. Can you relate emotional intelligence with karma? Karma, it depends on what is your definition of karma. If you look at karma as habitual patterns, so trying to be a little bit more pragmatic and not get too much into past life stories, even though that's a very Buddhist and Hindu perspective. If you look at karma as just habitual patterns that perpetuate themselves, I guess you could say that emotional intelligence is something, well, intelligence, IQ has definitely been increasing in the last 100 years. There's studies that show that we are becoming more sophisticated in our intellect, in our cognitive capacities. And I guess that's because children are more and more exposed to more sophisticated cognitive environments. So that is definitely growing and increasing. So you could say perhaps that the same is applied to karma, as the world becomes a more sophisticated environment. Our ability to process that information intellectually rises, and our ability to process that information emotionally has to keep up as well. Actually, I would like to ask that to you, Romy. Since intelligence, IQ has been increasing in the last 100 years, studies have shown. Do you believe that emotional intelligence has been increasing as well? Do you believe that we are becoming more emotionally intelligent?
I would love to say yes. I've looked, like I've Googled online to see, there's zero information on whether or not that is true as factual information. I don't necessarily think that because our intellect has increased, that our emotions have increased with it. I don't think that they're relatable. I don't think one brings the other one. I know emotional intelligence is teachable, which is great. I fear that social media and our ability to use technology, whilst it's increased maybe our intellect, I fear that it has decreased our emotional intelligence, because social media, yes, it has its benefits, and yes, technology has its benefits. For anyone that knows me, that knows I'm a bit anti-technology and social media, but I fear that it has made a bit of a dent in that, because particularly younger people, and even probably from your generation down, not so much from mine, I'm still a phone person or a video person or a face-to-face person, but people that are younger really, really use texts and emojis to have conversations. And which
is very difficult to then recognize the emotion behind the message if the vehicle of communication is messaging, right?
Well, absolutely. And it's emojis, but it's also, you know, LOL. So rather than seeing your friend really, really laugh out, have a hearty laugh with them, you're getting an LOL. Do you know what I mean? So there's no interpersonal relationships, and I fear that younger people are losing the ability to communicate, empathize, because we're not feeling the other person. If, you know, if we couldn't have this conversation via text, it would be impossible. I need to feel you. So if you're talking empathy and awareness of others, there needs to be a way to communicate that feels each other, rather than texting or emailing and having miscommunications and misunderstandings. So I fear that possibly it's going in the wrong way, even though there's much more an increase of understanding of emotional intelligence and an increase of teachers wanting to teach it to their students. I have a lot of friends that are teachers, both in Thailand and here and in Australia, and they really, really do want it to students. So I think that's a really positive thing.
Yeah. Could it be that this is where we at this point in time, where there's been so much pressure and so much frustration building up with this way of processing our reality simply and mostly through our intellect, that now we got to a point where emotions are just erupting all over the world, and we see this quite obviously and quite shockingly happening all around, huh?
Yeah, and I think there are different processes, obviously, that you can use, and there's lots of them, but I want to bring one of them because it happened recently with a client who has a great difficulty in expressing how he feels. He has a great difficulty in working out what emotions he's feeling. He's just frustrated, but he's stuck, and he can't work out the emotion, the word to attach to it. So I asked him to do some writing therapy and to actually write about how he was feeling, and to try and, you know, peel the onion and get to some deeper layers to see what's behind it. And he originally emailed me a few sort of one-liners, a few sort of points. And I was just like, no, honey, go back to the drawing board, pen and paper, sit with yourself, spend some time and think about it. And writing therapy, I won't get into the whole thing, so it's its own topic, but the process of actually physically handwriting from sort of forward to backwards in whatever your language is actually helps you process your emotions and delve in deeper, and you will 100% of the time get to deepers. But the minute you get technology, which is static, laptops are static, phones are static, you lose the ability to actually move through.
On that note, let me just scroll up. Are you still with us, Romy? Yeah. There's a couple of questions.
Yeah, I froze there for a minute, didn't I?
Yeah. So, Foggy Bottom Girl asks, in ThaiVedic, which plays a greater role in assessing a client's needs? Emotional intelligence or intuition? Emotional intelligence or intuition? I would say that both of them are extremely interrelated. That it is our ability to identify, to listen, to be in touch with our emotions and expand from there, and being able to listen to the client's needs from an emotional level, a physical level, a psychological level. I think they're extremely interrelated. I'd say that it's important also to have just intelligence, IQ, understanding how the medicinal system that you're practicing works, so you can actually understand the diagnosing process and how to move from there into an effective treatment, and how to apply the treatment intelligently. But the way that I see it, this human interaction, the way that I see the bodywork sessions that I practice, I see them very much as a form of communication. And particularly, I see them as a form of non-verbal communication. So the moment that we're not using our verbal channel of communication to exchange data, information, I need to use all my other senses. I need to really drop into that ability of listen, Listen not just with my ears, but listen to the whole being that is in front of me, how they're moving, how they're speaking, little nuances that communicate more than what the words are saying. And I think this is the language of the body. And the body doesn't speak with words. The body speaks with feelings, sensations, emotions. So the ability to listen deeply to that is a form of intuition. Would you agree with that, Romeo? Would that something to add?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think to do the kind of work that you do and do it well, and you often say that the work that you do is like a silent dance, and it is quite intuitive. And if you're looking at intuition and body to body understanding language without words, and then you go back to the 5 elements of emotional intelligence, you're looking at self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy. So you're using all the skills that help make intuition comfortable and easy. They need to do the work that you do well also. So into a number of different languages of body and mind.
Nice. So emotional intelligence is something that can be cultivated. It's something that we can learn. Huh?
Yes.
How?
Well, it's difficult and not. I always say the information that I share when I'm, say, working with people, whether I'm doing a counseling session or running courses, the information that I teach is not difficult, but the implementation of taking that knowledge and information can be difficult. Same with anything when you learn something new. The main thing for me really is starting with self-awareness. We cannot change what we are not aware of. Okay, so part of it. My latest book, The Key, when I'm working with teenagers, is all about self-awareness so that we can be aware, so that we can create behavior change. And you need the awareness to create the behavior change. You need to be aware of what's working, what's not working, why. How do I feel about that? What do I want to do? How am I impacting others, whether it's my brother, sister, parents, teachers, friends? Do I have any friends? Why not? What kind of friend am I? So you then start going into hundreds of different questions.
That sounds a little bit overwhelming. So
yeah, well, that's why you start with self-awareness, as in just self-awareness. Be aware of yourself. And I always say start simple.
Sorry, go ahead.
We'll start simple, as in, some people say, oh, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to begin. At the end of each day, for instance, say, did I have a good day or a bad day? And get a pen and paper. Why was my day good, or why do I feel at the end of the day? What happened? Did something trigger me? Did something upset me? Did something remind me of something else? Was I frustrated? Was I happy, sad, engaged? How do I feel at the end of my day? And can I work out what happened that's making me feel this way? And maybe in one day you felt good and bad for a number of different reasons, but what are the reasons? Start being aware of yourself so that next time you bring in mindfulness practice, which is, can I be aware in this moment of, I'm starting to feel upset. Oh, I can see why, because I've written about it this week and now it makes sense. What can I do in this moment to switch my behavior or switch my reaction into a response? So you break it down into really, really tiny pieces so that you can start somewhere. But we always start with self-awareness, and it is teachable. I mean, I do 12-year-olds and 16-year-olds, and we break it into tiny, tiny bite sizes. Even when I'm counseling, we do this much this week, and then we think about it all week so that next week we can discuss it and move on to this much. But everything's tiny, tiny pieces so that you feel motivated and inspired and a sense of achievement so that you can move into the next little piece. So it's keeping it really
I love that
simple.
you just answer the question about karma with your own little words, with the simple exercise that you suggested, where you just, by writing down, how am I feeling? How is my day experience has been, and starting to identify some habitual patterns, habitual emotions. Why do I feel like this? Oh, I wrote about it, and I start to see a common thread running through. This is a great answer for, what was it? Nas bocas do mundo. Another way of relating emotional intelligence and karma. Starting to identify your habitual pattern of emotions and the impact that that has on your day and your own daily interactions. And by identifying that, starting to make well-informed, intelligent decisions.
Yeah. And it's the same, it's the same in every area. Like if you go to a doctor or you go to an alternative therapist, if I came to you for a session, often the first questions, what have you been doing? What have you been eating? How have you been feeling? Are you energetic, lacking energy? What are you looking for? You're looking for my patterns. Am I eating a lot of sugar every day and is it making me feel high and then low? Okay, well, what do I do about that? Maybe I want to monitor how much sugar I'm having. Do you know what I mean? So it can make sense on a whole lot of levels, whether we're talking body, digestive system, emotions, mental state. So it makes sense in all the different worlds once we break it down.
Great. I have one more question. Nas bocas do mundo, is emotional intelligence more related with an action or a reaction?
Oh, good question.
Good question. I would say an action, a response. I would even say rather than an action, a response. And then you need to understand the difference between a response and a reaction. I'll say a reaction is something that is automatic and therefore deprived of self-awareness. It's just an autopilot. You just react. It's an impulse.
Yeah.
And usually it comes from a closed space in me that reaches or engages or stimulates a closed response in you. While a response comes with a great deal of self-awareness, generally comes from a space in me that is open, and it reaches to a space in you that is open or invites for the same openness.
Yeah, look, I completely agree. And that's why I love the question, is because I work so closely with the concept of reaction versus response, which is, exactly what you're just saying. When we react, it's usually we've been triggered, we're feeling defensive. No good ever comes from a reaction. A reaction is usually that thing that you go, oh God, I wish I could take that back. A response is take a breath, take a second, a minute, whatever it is, to think, then respond. And then you're creating a conversation, you're creating an invitation to discuss whatever it is. But when you react, you're defensive, you've then got to a point where you've made them defensive, and now you're in a combat. So emotional intelligence, again, if you're looking at self-regulation, it's to not fall into those patterns. Self-awareness, am I doing those social skills, empathy, how's the other person going, where are they coming, about action, reaction, response, which I love as a topic. It's a really cool topic because it's such a simple thing. I've worked with clients where we've literally spent a few weeks just talking about reaction versus response, and then we create some serious behavior change.
Once it clicks, it really clicks.
Yeah, better friendships, better relationships, and it makes such a difference if you can just understand that little twist there.
Great. So for people that want to cultivate, practice, train, develop emotional intelligence, resources, how can people find you? What sort of resources do you have available to help and assist people in this process of cultivating more emotional intelligence?
Okay. Well, my website is romyrosberg.com, which is hopefully somewhere here. Obviously, online counseling. I have 2 books, which I have with me.
Can you show us,
I feel
please?
very nerdy.
I have that one.
But this one, The 5-Minute Emotional Intelligence, I signed Sebastian's boob when he bought this. So this one,
this is alive. We cannot beat that. Yeah, I find that one to be a great resource because it has lots of tiny little exercises.
Yeah. So this is a great exercise in self-awareness, getting to know yourself better so that you can then cultivate a lot of the things that we've been talking about. This is my more recent one. It's called The Key, a Social Emotional Toolkit for Teens. And this one works with teenagers, either in schools or teenagers alone. I actually have a lot of adults that have bought this who have just didn't learn the skills, and it's full of videos and activities and actual what can I do, you know, break it down into tiny pieces. So this is more of a guidebook in how can I learn to do these things. So don't worry if you're an adult, because this is brilliant for adults too. It's just the stuff we never learned.
Okay. Got a comment from Grodikis. You have a sense of humor, Romy, while your friend here has wise face. Oh. And is a deep thinker and sure a fine human. I like studying faces. I can tell this person has a great deal of emotional intelligence.
I like that.
Thank you very much, Rodriguez. Romy, I think it's time that we start to wrap up our conversation. Yeah. I'd like to invite people that are watching us to please find this woman, check out her social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, follow her, see what she's up to. She's doing great work, and this is a woman that has definitely a lot to share. She has helped me quite a bit along the way, which I'm very, very grateful. Two books that you can check. There's private sessions that Romy offers, trainings as well. Right?
Not at the moment, not with the world
Not
gone
at
a
the
bit
moment, yeah.
mad.
Not with a ban on traveling. Yeah, you need to do an online course like I did. And that's a good time for me to do my shameless self-promotion, which is very much, well, it is very much about what we're talking about here. I find that to communicate through touch requires emotional intelligence, requires to cultivate self-awareness and an ability to listen. So like I said before, healing is communication. Can we drop into that space of deep listening? Where am I at right now? Accepting this person as they are in front of me. That's what we call Vipassana, unconditional acceptance. And from that space of realness, rawness, deep integrity, how can we consciously choose to move in a direction of health, of balance, of greater vitality? And we use that by working with sensations, feelings, emotions. So this is a new language system, so to speak. And at the same time, this is our primary language, you know, speaking this language, through the language of touch comes before speech, comes before sights, is the first tool that we have to connect, relate, communicate with another human being. So there's an online course that you can find the link on our ThaiVedic page. There's some self-awareness exercises, meditation, Waikru, mantra, prayer, and a step-by-step guided sequence to work on the mind and the nervous system, what in ThaiVedic we call Vata. So if we have any last questions, we have time for one more question. Scroll through, see if I missed something. Yeah. Great. Romy, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for making the time and sharing your wisdom and your humor with us. Hopefully to be continued. For those of you listening to us, just to wrap it up and creating a bit of a thread that's been happening throughout these last 3 weeks as we started doing these lives. 3 weeks ago we had Kimana, and we talked about the cycles of time. And one of Kimana's suggestions was to look at the Vata stage of the day from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. And do a little check-in. Just how am I feeling? How's my level of energy? Do a little pause, listen, lay down, rest. stop the acting, stop the doing, stop the generating, and just pause for a moment. The following week we had Simone, when we talked about Shavasana and the importance of Shavasana, and she explained that in great detail, and that could be used as an invitation or a further invitation to what Kimana suggested, to at the end of the day to pause, and that deep listening could take place in the form of Shavasana, that deep surrender where we drop the nervous system into that parasympathetic rest and digest mode. And now this week with Romy, we yet again get another suggestion. So our tool belt keeps on increasing, and now we have yet another tool, perhaps doing a little list, a little writing. What do you call that? Journaling or
writing, journaling, subconscious writing, free flow writing, anything you like.
Right now, how am I feeling today? How's my emotions, my cycle of emotions being throughout the day? And starting to recognize some patterns, some reactions, and slowly starting to move in the direction of response. Cool. All right, my dear. Let's check on the questions. From Nas Bocas do Mundo. Sofia Brazão, furring. Not quite sure. Thanks, yeah. Super useful information. No. Okay, last question. Name a political leader with good emotional intelligence. Was it the president of Uruguay? Yeah, politics is really not my strength, but I don't know if it was the president of Uruguay that donates 90% of his salary. He drives a Volkswagen Beetle. It seems to be a pretty emotionally intelligent dude. But yeah, the realm of politics, my friend, is really to be discussed on another channel because totally out of my league there.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Right. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Please follow Romy, see what this woman is up to. If you don't follow ThaiVedic yet, please just join, subscribe our channels, and stay in touch. Ask us questions. And if you have some suggestions for future topics, we are absolutely open to hear them. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and to be continued.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.